In this tutorial, we will examine the mixer and the related functions that can be accessed by this group of buttons on the right-hand side of the screen. They control Live's inputs and outputs, the send and return effects, the mixer, track delay, and the crossfader. Let's go through each one in turn and see what they do. The first button on the list is marked I/O, and this controls the inputs and outputs for each track. Basically, this is where you choose how signals are routed within Live and how audio gets in and out of the program via your sound card. The first box is marked Audio From, and this is where you control where audio is inputted onto this track. By default, this will most likely be set to the audio in from your sound card, and this is listed as External In. In the second box down, you can now choose between having a mono or stereo input and between which input you have on your sound card. If you can't see all the inputs that should be available to you, click on Configure in the top box and it will take you directly to the section of Preferences where your audio inputs are set up. Click on Input Config and make sure that all the inputs you want are enabled. You will now be able to find these in the second Audio From box. If you're only using Live to DJ with, then it probably won't matter what Audio From is set to. However, once you start wanting to record your own samples in, for example recording an MC or vocals, then this will be where you need to set the input. It's also worth mentioning that you can set the Audio From to receive an input from another channel. This gives you many possibilities for routing audio between tracks. The next option down is marked Monitor, and this is where you set whether you can hear the inputted signal out loud or not. If you want to hear the input all the time, then this should be set to In. Auto is used if you just want to hear it when you're recording, and for most situations this is sufficient. Off turns the input off completely. The Audio To setting determines where the audio is sent to. If this is set to Master, then the track will send its output to the master track over here. If this is set to External Out, then the signal is routed directly to your sound card, and the master track will have no effect. If you use External Out, then in the same way as the input section, you need to choose which output to send the signal to in the second box. Again, you need to make sure that all of the outputs you require are turned on in Preferences, and if they're not, go to the Output Config option. The main options for DJs are to either send all of the audio tracks to the master track, or to split them up so that you can send each track out to a different output on your audio interface. We look at each of these options in the Physical Connections tutorial. If you decide to send all of the track outputs to the master track, then make sure that the Master Out setting is set to the output on your sound card that goes to your speakers. Let's hide the Input-Output section now and click on the two icons below marked S and R. These refer to send and return effects and are used when you want to send the output from one track, or often a number of tracks, via these send controls, over to the return track here, where an effect can be added to it. This is explained in further detail in the tutorial on audio effects. Let's now shut the send and returns and open the next section, which contains Live's mixer. The keyboard shortcut to open or shut the mixer is Control or Command, Alt and M. The mixer section is really quite straightforward and works in a similar way to a hardware mixer or a DJ mixer. The slide on the right acts as a volume control and can be dragged up or down to adjust it. When a clip is playing, you can see the level of it by how high the level meter goes. Try to get into the habit of keeping an eye on how high this level is peaking. If I turn the level up to full, you can now see that the signal on this track is turning red, indicating that it's too high and the sound will now be starting to clip and distort. In this case, I know that the slider needs to be turned down. A useful tip to know is that if at any point you want to move the slider back to its starting position, simply click on the slider and press delete. It will now be back where it started. If you'd like more detail while you're using the mixer, it can be extended by dragging its upper edge to give you a full-size mixer with a graduated scale. The dial on the top left of the mixer is the pan control, and this can be used to pan the sound between the left and right speaker. The number below this specifies whether the track is active or not. This can be used as an easy way to quickly mute or activate a track without having to stop it. The keyboard shortcuts to mute or activate tracks 1 to 8 are keys F1 to F8. This is a really handy keyboard shortcut to remember and can be very useful when mixing. The next button, marked S, refers to solo, and when pressed, Live will turn off all the tracks except the one selected. If you want to hear multiple tracks being soloed, hold down the Control or Command key while you press the solo button. The final button is the Record Arm button, and this is used to record enable the track. You'll notice that all of the stop buttons have now become record buttons. Simply press on one of these and Live will start recording in that clip slot. We talk about recording in much more detail in the advanced course. The overall volume for the whole project can be controlled by the level control on the master track over here. There is also a pan control and the preview and cue volume. If you do all of your mixing within Live, the cue button will be very important to you, and we talk about how to use it in the tutorial Physical Connections. That's covered the mixer section. Now let's click on the button marked D, which refers to the track delay. This can be used to compensate if you're finding timing differences between internal sounds played by Live and external hardware being triggered by MIDI. For most DJs, you'll find that you won't need to touch this setting. The final button on this side of the screen has an X on it, and this refers to the DJ crossfader. We look at Live's crossfader in more detail in the tutorial Physical Connections. That's all of the buttons in the mixer section dealt with. However, before we finish, let's have a look at the difference between using these all in Session View, where we've been so far, and Arrangement View. In Arrangement View, most of these functions are all exactly the same. They're just laid out horizontally rather than vertically. If a control is changed in one view, then it will be changed in the other view too. For example, if you turn the track volume of track 1 up in Session View, the volume will change in Arrangement View too, and vice versa. The only minor difference between the views is that there are no buttons for send effects or for the crossfader in Arrangement View. Instead, both of these can be automated over time. We will look at using automation in Arrangement View in the advanced course in the tutorial Creating Mixes. This is the end of the tutorial on the mixer.